All right, so what we'll discuss, we're going to go through the COVID impacts, like what COVID is impacting in our lives, which is undeniable, things are happening. And then also what we do have control over when it comes to the circumstances that are happening in our lives. And then there's a decision that I want you to make. And I'm going to walk through those 3 options that we basically all have. And then I am going to explain our connection with our feelings and a life coaching tool that I use all the time. I use it personally and I use it all in my programs and coaching, called the thought model. So I'm going to walk through actual thought models. And I'll touch on a little bit, without getting too sciencey, why we have these cravings and these urges to eat or drink or have other behaviors that don't actually serve us, right? So I'm going to talk about why the brain does that. And then finally, I'm going to end with, how do you indulge, right? So you don't want to just be like going on a strict diet or, saying, oh, I can't have this, I can't have that, because I want to either lose weight or I want to optimize my health. How do you find the balance of indulging without going off the rails? So I'm going to show you my actual techniques that I use with all of my programs and clients. So I just wanted to offer that to everyone during this time, because I just feel like giving away what I know so that people can feel better during this time. And then we'll close up, and if there are any questions, we'll go from there. All right, COVID-19, it is here. We're going to be talking about COVID, life before COVID and life after COVID, right? It is going to change our lives probably forever, right? So this is the COVID time of our lives in this generation. So it's here. And what it does impact, well, I came up with a laundry list, and this can change as well. Let me move this over. So COVID, it definitely impacts our ability to be in physical contact with the people that we love and care about, or just even with our neighbors and people at the store. We have to maintain that social distancing. We have an increased focus on hygiene and washing our hands, and some people are wearing masks and minimizing our potential exposure to the virus. This affects our ability to actually go places like concerts and sporting events and trips and travel and weddings and all of those kinds of things. It's affecting in some cases, the delivery times for certain things that we might be ordering, certain products, and the availability of certain products, like the whole toilet paper thing in the beginning. Hopefully that's getting better for most of us. I know I can find toilet paper these days. It's affecting the way that we shop and the way we're spending our money, right? So we're spending more on food and things for the home and less on entertainment outside of the home, right? We're probably spending a lot less on gas because we're not going as many places as we used to. We're not running around shopping. We're not doing all kinds of the errands that we used to do probably. Some of us are doing more takeout and some of us aren't. So, it's just affecting the way that we're spending our money. For students, a lot of students are basically doing their school from home if they're still in school. And then a lot of us are also doing more work from home. And then there are some people who are actually working out there, front lines, essential workers that are basically out there exposing themselves to the virus potentially. There could be, for some of us, some financial impacts as well. Some people might be unemployed now, hopefully temporarily. Some businesses might be showing a decline in their business activity, depending on what their business is. All right. And then some of us might even be sick or know people that are sick or look really critical, or maybe we even know some people that have died from COVID-19 or have died during this time of something other than COVID-19. So that's what is impacted right now by COVID. Here's what COVID does not impact. And you might think that this top one isn't true, but it is true. This COVID-19 does not impact. It does not dictate what we want to think, how we want to feel, and what we actually do within the confines of our constraints right now. So COVID actually has nothing to do with what we choose to eat and drink, aside from maybe not having different foods available, but we can still kind of make do. It's not dictating what we choose to watch, read, work on, or listen to. You know, we don't have to watch the news all day. We don't have to read the terrible, you know, news stories. We can work on things, on whatever we choose during this time, as long as it's within the confines of what the life in COVID looks like these days. And COVID doesn't affect our ability to practice self-care and our ability to have fun and to be light and to connect in whatever way we can these days, like through Zoom conferencing or FaceTiming, or even connecting, practicing social distancing, connecting with folks in our lives or within our home, right? So it doesn't affect our ability right now, at least here, to go outside, right, and get that fresh air and hopefully get some movement and some exercise at the same time. All right, so there's a lot of things that COVID doesn't impact. The bottom line is COVID-19, it's a circumstance and we cannot control it. It just is right now. This is part of our life, but it really has nothing to do with what we choose to eat or drink. And so, yes, we need to acknowledge that we are either scared or frustrated, annoyed, fearful, all those things. But what I want to get through to you today is that it's not something that we need to dwell on or make it as heavy as I know for a lot of people it is feeling right now. So hopefully what I'm going to show you, especially as we go through the thought model, is a way that you can shift your thinking so that you feel better even during these circumstances that can seem pretty dire and heavy. All right, so here's the decision I was talking about. Here is what you have to decide, right? So when it comes to your health, let's just focus on the health. But like I said in the beginning, if you wanted to talk about your money, your business, your work, your relationships, you can actually make these decisions in these areas as well. So when it comes to COVID-19, do you want, and going through it, during it and after, do you want to, number one, feel better, be healthier, be lighter and leaner? And this requires making the decision and the commitment to do it, right? To actually like, yep, this is what I want, and I'm going to do what it takes to get there. Or number two, do you want to be about the same? Like, and a lot of us, it's okay to be in this place. I'm kind of in that place too. Like, do you want to be about the same? Like, I don't want to gain weight, right? I don't want to be unhealthy and like feel bad in my body. But I'm not really looking to like be, you know, meet any major goals right now. So that's okay too. Like, if you want to kind of just get through it and be okay and you know, also just feel good about it, you have that choice as well. And then number three, I'm afraid, is the default. Do you want to be less healthy, more inflamed, heavier, and feel worse? And like I said, this is the default, right? So if we don't put some intention behind our experience, then most of us are going to default to that because we're probably going to lean on things like emotional eating or drinking, or just like not putting the effort into what it takes to support our health. Not everybody, but for most of us, that will be the default. So you can put that in the chat, 1, 2, or 3, where do you want to be through COVID and after COVID, right? So I'm definitely like, I'm okay with 2. I'd be happy with number 1, and I'm actually doing things like I'm exercising and things like that. And I'm making sure that I'm kind of following my framework that I teach and so on. But I'm not like striving for anything where I'm like really focused on it. So I'm kind of 2, I'm okay with number 1, definitely don't want number 3. All right, so the bottom line is ending emotional eating means that you realize that your circumstances, now right now I'm talking about COVID-19, but this could be anything in life, has nothing to do with what we choose to put in our mouths, right? Like that is the bottom line. So some of you might be saying, and I hear this a lot, but wait, this is really bad. People are dying. Like this is scary. Or I'm out of work. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. Yes, it's scary, right? The trick is to acknowledge and let those feelings of fear, uncertainty, frustration, whatever, be experienced, and then to allow them to move on, right? You're not dwelling, right? So we're acknowledging our feelings. We're not trying to suppress them or bypass them. We're acknowledging those feelings, but we're not, stuck in the muck of them, right? We're not dwelling and ruminating and obsessing about it. We're just like, yep, I'm feeling this feeling's coming up. And for me, sometimes these feelings come up in waves throughout, certain days. It's just, and I just notice them and it's like, well, okay, I'm feeling this, I'm experiencing it. I don't really want to dwell there, because when I do, then I don't feel good. And then I might do things or be in a bad mood, or might emotionally eat or drink to feel better, right? So it's about putting the feelings in their place and not letting them drive our behaviors and our feelings and our behaviors and our actions, that kind of thing. You're finding a balance. All right, so some fun fact. We as humans generate about 70,000 thoughts per day, between 60 and 70,000 thoughts per day. And here's the interesting thing. We have what's called a negativity bias, right? It's a survival mechanism. So, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later when we get into more of the neuroscience, but so most of our thoughts are negative, right? And then 80% of those negative thoughts, and our positive ones too, but mostly negative, obviously by a long, big margin, they're repetitive, meaning we keep thinking the same thoughts over and over and over and over again. So it's no wonder we might not feel great all the time if we just let our brain go on autopilot and don't do some of the thought work that I'm going to walk you through. And so a lot of us are very out of touch with our feelings. We just know it's not good. But we don't really have a good grasp on what we're actually feeling. Is it fear? Is it frustration? Is it something else? And then we don't really know what is driving those feelings, right? So the key here is being aware of the feelings. Feelings really just translate into sensations in the body, right? So it might be a tightness, it might be a fluttering, it could be pain, right? So all of these feelings of anxiety, it could be agitation, feelings of disempowerment, hopelessness, bored, being restless. That's a big one that drives a lot of emotional eating. Maybe we're a little annoyed, or maybe we're just a little blah, like we feel a little depressed. So acknowledging and getting more specific as to what those feelings are, and then again, not dwelling on them, being okay with experiencing them, right? Once you know and accept that a feeling can't actually kill you, it can't. It's just a sensation that's generated from a thought. It's being experienced in the body and it needs to be expressed, right? And so once you kind of can make all these connections to the thoughts that drive the feelings, and those then influence your actions, whether that be compensatory behaviors or just trying to feel better or to not feel, like to numb out or mask your feelings, those are the connections that we're going to make. And I'm going to walk through some examples using the thought model. So here is one of my favorite tools that I use. It's from the Life Coach School, and it is called the thought model. And basically it starts you can get a piece of paper and write this down. Write down CTFAR. And you can do this for anything that's going on in your life. So what I suggest for my clients is they just do a thought download. Every thought that's coming into their brain, especially the ones that might be bothering them the most, right? So you start with your C for circumstance. So a circumstance is a factual fact, right? It's just a factual situation. Like, in our case that I'm going to walk through, the circumstance is life in COVID-19. There's no drama or story around it. It's just straight up facts. Everybody, if you asked about the circumstance, they would agree. So there would be no opinion or debate about it. It would just be like, yep, we're in life in COVID-19 right now. Thoughts. So that's your T line. Your thought is, you pick one per model, but you might have a thought download with like a dozen thoughts or many thoughts, right? So you pick one thought, maybe the thought that's bothering you the most, and it's just one, and you write that thought down. And if you find that more thoughts are coming up, like compounded with that one thought, you do separate models. Then you identify one feeling, the most predominant feeling related to that thought, right? So I'm going to walk through this. So just one, pick one, even though you might have mixed feelings about things, just try to pick one. And then actions. What do you do when you have this thought and when you have these feelings? What are the things that you do? Maybe it's emotional eating. Maybe it's more obsessing or ruminating. Maybe it's gossiping. Maybe it's trying to numb out or just avoid the feelings. So there's all kinds of things that we do to feel better, right? So what do you do when you have these thoughts that generate these feelings? And then finally, your R line is your results. What is the result from doing these things, right? And you'll see as we play these out in a couple of examples, I'm going to show you how your thoughts actually drive those results, right? It's not so much what you're doing. It starts really with what you're thinking about your circumstance. So it's pretty cool. So once you see it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, now I get it. All right, so here is the COVID thought model. Like I said, here's the circumstance, COVID-19. Thought. I mean, I'm hearing this all the time. This is really bad. No matter what you're thinking about, whether it be the virus itself, the spread of it, whether it be the financial, economic impact, whether it be, you know, the government outreach, overreach, all those different things. That we've all got different thoughts and opinions about what COVID-19 is doing to our lives and the impact it might have on our future. So we could, in general, let's say we're coming up with a thought that this is really bad. I know I come up with this thought a lot. And of course, that generates a feeling of, in this example, I'm using fear. Bottom line, it's usually going to be something that around those lines. It's going to be a negative feeling, most likely, right? The negative thought generates the negative feeling. And so what we might do, like I said, when we're feeling that this situation is really bad and we're feeling the sense of fear, we might eat or drink to feel better, to escape. We might activate our stress response, right, in our body and our nervous system, which might have some hormonal impacts when it comes to our adrenals. It might affect our sleep. So we might have all these different effects that kind of more go into the result line. We might watch more news because we're just kind of feeding the cycle of like, okay, I'm feeling uncertain. I need to know more. So gathering more information and just ruminating about it, right? And so what the result might be, well, if we're choosing to overeat or overdrink, we might gain weight. We might get, you know, more exhaustion. We might feel bloated. We might have poor sleep, like I said before. We might spend money, like that might be an action that we do, like, oh, I'm just going to go online shopping and buy everything from Amazon and like whatever. So all these can affect our bottom line, meaning literally our health, our weight, our bank accounts, what have you. So you see how this plays out. So the thought, this is really bad, and kind of living with that thought is affecting, it could in fact be producing these results. Might be for you. If that rings true, let me know. Notice how the connection between this thought and the results, right? So now I'm going to redo the model. This is where your power is, right? So you can do this for any circumstance in your life. And this is how I start this. When I'm working with a client or I'm teaching in a group, I ask the participants, what is your desired result when it comes to this circumstance, right? So in this case, we're talking about COVID-19. So you have to start kind of with the end in mind, getting clarity around that. Then you realize how your current thinking is not supporting your desired results. So let's say your desired result when you going through and coming out of COVID is you want to feel healthy, you want to be balanced, you want to feel good, you want to come out of quarantine even better, right? There's the desired result. I just put DR for that for clarity's sake, right? So same circumstance, COVID-19. Here's a thought I propose. This is one that I practice all the time, right? So there's uncertainty right now. We don't know what's going to happen, right? But it's going to be okay. It's a little bit of like having that faith that things are going to be okay, trusting that you're going to be okay, right? And that even if you're worried about somebody in your life that you love, they're going to be okay, right? No matter what, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And it's kind of, when you have those feelings, it's a neutral thought, right? We're not like saying, oh, COVID-19 is the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, we could find some silver linings in it for sure, but we can't be very Pollyanna-ish about it. I feel like for me, it has to be very resonant with my truth. So find a thought that's actually true for you, like at that nervous system level, because your body knows the difference. You can't lie to your body or your mind, right? It knows the difference. So I always suggest finding more of a neutral thought that acknowledges that, there is that feeling of uncertainty in this example, but it's going to be okay. Now, I don't feel great about that, but I feel acceptance, right? So you can come up with whatever feeling you want, but try to make it realistic and honest for you, not something that's like over the top positive. You don't want to just force positivity because, like I said, you can't really lie to your body and brain anyways. So when you feel the feeling of acceptance, maybe you will connect with your loved ones in a virtual way or a creative way. I know we're all doing that. You'll take care of yourself, right? You're not going to be like, oh, screw it, I'm just going to eat whatever I want, or I'm going to drink this whole bottle of wine tonight, right? You're hopefully going to take good care of yourself, right? Nourish yourself well, drink water, get some proper movement, get outside, get some fresh air, move throughout the day, get some good sleep, right? Those basic things, right? And hopefully you'll limit your consumption, your indulgence in news and negativity, which is basically the same thing for the most part, so that your brain isn't being constantly brainwashed with how bad things are, right? And so really, I've had to put myself on a kind of a news diet, or a research diet in my case, because I'm doing more of the alternative. I don't watch the news, but alternative research. I had to put myself on a little bit of a constraint with that, because it was kind of driving me crazy and really making me nervous and annoyed and outraged and that kind of thing. So I put myself on a very restricted amount of consumption of this research that I was found myself really getting caught up. It's just like a rabbit hole. So, and then when you think the thought, there's uncertainty right now, but it's going to be okay, you cultivate that feeling of acceptance, and then you do the things that actually support your desired result, you end up getting closer or actually achieving your desired result of feeling healthy, feeling balanced, being balanced, feeling good, and coming out of quarantine better. That's what I hope for all of you. I hope that makes sense. More on that. So again, we're not denying that COVID-19 is not happening. It's happening, right? We are accepting what is happening, but instead of being like swallowed by it and disempowered, we are empowered with the thoughts that we choose, how we want to feel about this, and the results that we want to cultivate. We have a lot of power here, even though it seems like we're losing that control in this day and age lately, right? We are empowered. We're empowered by what we choose to think, feel, and do within the confines of the life of COVID-19 right now. So the key is to take full ownership of those thoughts and choosing those thoughts that actually bring you to the results you want. Choosing the thoughts that serve you, as I say here, and then letting go, releasing, or at least neutralizing the thoughts that don't bring you to those results, right? So the thoughts of acceptance that I shared in the thought model, the new thought model, are neutralizing the this is bad thought that my brain wanted to go to, right? So that is our power. And you can do this if you write down the CTFAR, circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, results, and then do a desired result thought model after you kind of process through your current thought download and see what thoughts you can come up with for yourself so that you feel better too. All right, so without getting into too much science, let's talk about the brain. And especially, I know in working with a lot of my clients and in my program, a lot of us are dealing with urges, right? so we can work on our thoughts and like, okay, I'm not consuming too much negative news. I'm staying neutral or positive. I'm doing all these things, but I get these crazy cravings. Like I just want a glass of wine at night, or my kids are baking all these things and I just want to eat them, or I want ice cream or popcorn or whatever it is for you, pizza. And so there's a reason why, even aside from the thought model, that we are wired to eat. One is our survival physiology. So this is like neuro physiology, actually, that we all have as humans. So we are designed to avoid starvation, and the body will increase the desire for very highly palatable foods, right? So I know I don't have a sugar tooth, thankfully, a sweet tooth, but a lot of my clients do. I have a wine tooth, so I crave the wine, and more of like crunchy, salty types of things. But anyways, it doesn't matter what your desire is. We are wired for that desire, and it's a survival mechanism, right? Because if we didn't have any desire for food as a species, we probably would have died off because back then, and anyways, not so much now, but back in thousands and thousands of years ago, food was very hard to come by. So if you didn't have a desire to eat, and you didn't forage or kill your food, you would just end up dying, right? So these hunger mechanisms and this desire for highly palatable foods is very much in our survival physiology from thousands and thousands of years ago, but we still unfortunately have it. And so in our society, we're surrounded by highly palatable foods, junk foods that are very sweet and very satisfying, and they hit all of our, kind of neurotransmitters in our brain that make us feel good. We're also wired to store fat in times of stress. So this is another reason why managing your mind is really important, because if you keep choosing thoughts that are stressful, you will activate hormonally your mechanisms that signal fat storage, right? So insulin will go up. Even if you're not eating a ton of carbs, insulin will go up, and your body will be like, we better store this, because if this lady or guy is stressed out, that must mean that they're having a hard time finding food. So let's keep things on storage here in the belly area and the hips and thighs so that he or she survives. That's how we're wired too, even though that's not happening for many of us, especially in this country. Not all of us, but for many of us. We're also wired to avoid pain. That's just normal. So we don't want to feel discomfort or fear or anything that's not pleasurable, right? So we are wired to compensate for the discomfort that might arise from our thoughts or the circumstances in our lives that cause pain. So it's wired to bypass by adopting these behaviors of using food to soothe and feel better, or other behaviors as well. Could be alcohol, could be, drugs or shopping or Instagram or TV or whatever it is, gambling, whatever it is. So we want to avoid pain. So we have habituated these behaviors to not even feel the pain. This is why some people can be like, I don't even, it's so mindless. It happens so fast. Next thing you know, I'm in the cupboard, or I ate a whole bag of chips, or I ate a whole pint of ice cream. I didn't even know I was actually doing it. And that's because of the way, going to this last point, the way that the brain automates this behavior to avoid pain. We also want to seek pleasure, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand. We want to feel better. We want to boost our dopamine, which is one of our neurotransmitters in our brain that makes us feel motivation. And that's a big one for driving cravings. So our neurochemistry is programmed to get that dopamine hit. And so if it's used to reaching for the chips or the glass of wine or the ice cream, the wiring, that neurochemistry is really just designed to give you those urges, right? So it's very biochemical as well as like a mental exercise as well. So that's why it can feel challenging and beyond our control. But I want you to know that if you can practice, I'm going to go through that in a sec, this urge cycle and understand the urge cycle, you might be able to get out of it. This is something that I teach and I practice with my my students. So here's just breaking this down a little bit. So when you are in this urge cycle, which basically means I have a craving and I want XYZ, let's say it's ice cream. So you, first of all, where does that urge come from? It comes from an association that you have with the thing, the substance, or the behavior. And however, it's not like you wake up, most of us, we're not waking up and we're not like craving a glass of wine. Like it accumulates through discomfort and tension that builds throughout the day. And those come from number one here, which is our root cause thoughts. So again, if you can thought model and shift your thoughts to relieve the feelings of tension, you might not even get into the urge cycle, right? But that's where they start, because there's some tension built up, or perhaps it's a rumination or an association with pleasure. Those thoughts have to come first before the urge actually comes, but they can be very automatic, so you don't even know that they're coming. They can be very sneaky and clever. But if you can catch it, you might even be able to bypass this urge cycle where you don't even experience them anymore. And this is true, like for people who used to be smokers. I used to be a smoker back in my teenage years and early 20s. And I couldn't imagine during that I could ever stop smoking, but now I could care cigarettes just gross me out. So now I've accomplished that through, I didn't have these tools back then, but I don't know, some miracle, I just got out of it. But this is something that, that could be part of that whole thing, where you can disassociate with the urge altogether. But let's say you can't, you missed it, and now the urge is here, right? So now you're getting into the second part of the urge cycle, which is the urge point. It's the point where either your brain mindfully says, I want that, or you automatically just head to the freezer and get that ice cream. This is where, if we can apply some mindfulness, you can ask yourself, am I willing to experience discomfort and allow this urge to pass? That's your second opportunity to get out of the urge cycle, right? So am I willing to experience this discomfort? Now, that's what I call allowing the urge. You can also do things that aren't as effective, but they're okay, which is distract yourself from the urge. Like, oh, I want the ice cream, but I'm going to have celery, or I'm going to have a cup of tea, right? I want the wine, but I'm going to have a cup of tea. You could do something like that. So that's a distraction technique. It doesn't really take care or diminish the urge. The urge will still keep coming back, but you can find ways to like just substitute instead of actually allowing the urge. So distraction. You could also resist the urge, which is really hard and very unsustainable. So basically that's like, nope, I want that, but I'm not having it. I swear I'm not having it, right? I'm going to be good, right? So you could do that, but again, it's not very effective, because eventually it's going to come back. You're not going to be as strong with your willpower, and you're going to give into the urge. And you could also, let's see, we could distract, we could resist it, or we could avoid it, like just pretend it's not there, right? So like, okay, I'm going to go for a walk or a run, which is kind of like distraction too. So let's say you can't do either, or you just missed your opportunity at some point, and you are now further along in the urge cycle. You can continue through the urge cycle and satisfy the urge. So this might be where you have the ice cream, you have the glass of wine, you have the chips, whatever it is, the popcorn. Now, most of us will get into the shame spiral of like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like, oh, great. Like my jeans are going to be tight, or my shorts are going to look horrible, or my bathing suit, like we just beat ourselves up. And this is your third opportunity to get out of this cycle. Can I not judge myself or beat myself up, and learn what I can from the urge? And really the best thing that you can do is learn what thoughts actually created the urge to begin with, right? So a lot of times it might be something like just overwhelm, perfectionism, especially for moms out there that are homeschooling and possibly working as well, and dads, so it's not just moms, but like all the, you know, and then trying to keep the house clean and all the other things that might be going on. So that's where doing some thought downloads, the CTFAR model, would be helpful to kind of like unpack where these thoughts are coming from. And can I shift those thoughts so that I don't create those feelings of tension and overwhelm to begin with, right? So that's more of the more powerful work than actually allowing the urge and experiencing the discomfort. That's another great skill, but the real like power is in catching your thoughts to begin with. All right, indulging intentionally. So this is something I work with every single client, every single program, because going through a cycle of yo-yo dieting my whole life, right? It was only in the past couple of years that I finally broke free from yo-yo dieting, where, you know, you go on a diet, you're really good, and you lose the weight, or maybe you don't, depending on your hormones. You try really hard, you do everything right, and then as soon as the diet's over, or you give up on the diet, you start to regain the weight. So my whole thing is like ending that diet cycle. So one thing that I teach right off the bat is, how do you indulge intentionally? So we're getting out of the emotional eating, the compensatory eating and drinking, and using intention around what we choose to indulge in. And then the whole thing is, and I'm going to walk through the guidelines with this, is how to do that and still support your health. And if you have weight goals, to support your weight goals as well. So we're shifting from emotional eating without dieting, deprivation, and restriction. Doesn't mean you're like going off the rails and eating whatever you want or drinking whatever you want. So it has to be in balance, but the shift is your empowerment in terms of you really being honest and connected with what you're choosing and your results, and then making that empowered choice to modify so that you feel your best, you feel satisfied, and you're getting the results that you want. So here's how to do that. So I hear from a lot of moms, especially, who will clean their kids' plates, right? So they've got the crust from their grilled cheese or their leftover pizza or their whatever, and they'll, rather than put it in the garbage, they'll finish their plates. Or if it's like any kind of leftover, they'll be like, oh, I might as well finish this. We don't want to waste food, that kind of thing. So that's a classic example, but it could be other things like just grab, you know, kind of grab ass foods, we call it, where you're just kind of like, oh, I'm just going to grab that just out of habit or just out of boredom or what have you. So you want your indulgences to be only worth it foods or drinks, right? So decide, like, I love wine, I always share that, but like, say it's like ice cream is my favorite, right? So say, let's say it's ice cream for you. So you would say ice cream is definitely my worth it thing, or maybe it's like like based upon an occasion. So maybe it's like I love to have cheesecake when I'm at, you know, out getting takeout from XYZ restaurant. So whatever it is, maybe it's like your favorite pizza or something like that. So it's only worth it foods and drinks. You decide what those are. You want to make sure that whatever it is, that it doesn't actually cause you, cause major inflammation in your body. So for instance, if you had gluten sensitivity or celiac disease, obviously, you wouldn't pick something with wheat flour in it, right? So it has to be something that your body actually doesn't get, you know, react to very negatively. So otherwise, it would be finding your ideal dose and frequency. So alcohol is another example where it's a toxin. If you have too much, it's going to cause inflammation and you're going to get like a hangover. But if you have it in the right dose, it's fine, right? Or at least that's for me, unless you're like allergic or sensitive to alcohol. So whatever that is, then finding the right dose for you, and that's completely unique, and the frequency that works for your feelings of satiety and like feeling satisfied, and the results that you want. So I always use the example, when I was in corporate America 10 years ago, I got into a habit of having wine almost every night. It was just like my way to unwind and just feel better after, a stressful day. So I would have wine every night, and it started out with maybe a glass, but then it would be like 2, 3, maybe even a whole bottle. And I would be inflamed. I couldn't sleep. Eventually my hormones got all dysregulated. And I was, next thing you know, 20, 30 pounds overweight. So I still drink wine, but now I pick the weekend, right? So Friday, Saturday, and have maybe 2 glasses, no more than that. And allows me to lose weight when I was losing weight, and or maintain my weight when I'm maintaining my weight, which is now. And also that dose through trial and error allows me to sleep well. It doesn't dysregulate my hormones at this point. So just being very connected to my body. So you have to find the right dose and frequency for your body. And then here's the key. You need to enjoy your indulgence with complete pleasure. Zero guilt, zero like, oh, I shouldn't have had that. None of that chatter in your brain. You just enjoy the heck out of it and really take it in, because believe it or not, your thoughts about what you're indulging in matter metabolically. If you have a negative association with your indulgence, like a little guilt or shame or anything like that, that's not going to bode well for your nervous system and your cells. They're going to be like, oh, this isn't good. And it just won't be metabolized as efficiently if you enjoy it with pleasure. It's amazing. Like, there's research on this. So trust me, enjoy it with pleasure. And then always check in with your biofeedback. How did that amount feel? Did you sleep well? Is your skin good? How's your weight? If you're working on your weight, are you getting bloated? Like, that biofeedback and just checking in with the results that you want is a good indication of whether or not your level of indulgences is working for you or not, right? So I hope that really helps you find a way. This is, again, something that I work on, kind of tweak on with clients, just helping them navigate so that they don't go overboard or restrict too much, which is a lot of us who have dieted our whole lives. We're like, no, I'm not going to have any indulgences. Nope, because I need to be good, right? So we figure out the right level of indulgences for the individual. And some people do best not indulging. It's just not in there. They're just better abstainers than moderators. I'm more of a moderator. So that's also a conversation that I'd have as well with you. All right. Okay, so we're wrapping up and we'll kind of shift to questions here. But the whole thing with this too is just always being very gentle with yourself. Know that this is a practice. You are going to make mistakes, right? You're not going to be perfect. And one of the best things that you can do for your success is to be okay with messing up. And kind of like with the urge cycle, instead of going into that shame spiral, go into like, oh, what can I learn from this? Can I be gentle with myself? And just know that your next decision can be one that's aligned with the results that you want. So really the key is, and I tell this to all my clients, is just don't give up, right? Know that it's a process and it's not about being perfect at all, right? Another tip that I have for everybody is to start writing things down. We can be very disconnected from our feelings and the thoughts. Like, it's something that, again, with those 70,000 thoughts swirling around in our brain all the time, it's very easy to just let them go on autopilot and not have true connection to what we're actually thinking and why. So writing things down, I do this most nights. I will write things down, especially if I've got something bothering me, or things like gratitude, trying to celebrate and find the silver linings in the situations. Journaling is a great practice to be able to help you make connections. You can also journal your food if you want to, especially kind of connecting symptoms with your choices. And also your feelings, right? Because sometimes a lot of times our digestion can be affected by how we're feeling. If we're feeling high levels of stress, we're not going to digest our food properly, which means we're not going to assimilate the nutrients. Our brain's not going to get the signals of satisfaction. And so we can be hungrier. And so looking at not only what you're eating, how you're feeling, and your results, your biofeedback, that's like a key thing. So you can journal that too. And then finally, get support. I do have free 20-minute discovery sessions available to anybody who's not already a client with me. And also, I have come up with a lockdown special. This is if you want to go further with your nutrition. I carved out a module in my big 8-week program. That's a $500 program, but I carved out module 1. I used to sell it for $100, $97. I cut it in half during this lockdown special, $47. It's all online. I'm in a Facebook group to support you. So anybody can join that. You just go to evelynd.com/special. So if you are interested in getting more support with kind of this whole balance of not going on a restrictive yo-yo diet, but figuring out how to indulge and how to work on, and I go way into things like there's meal plans, there's intermittent fasting guidelines, there's all kinds of tools in the program that you'll have immediate access to as well. So I marked that down to $47 just during this whole COVID thing, just to give people more resources. So you are all welcome to join that. It's available right now. And then you join the Facebook group and you just ask away, and I can help coach you in there as well. Join at evelynd.com/special if you want to take advantage of that deal, and reach out if you want that free 20-minute discovery session. I'm happy to help in any way I can. I'm not going to push you into anything. It's not a sales pitch. We could just talk about your situation. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'm going to close up then. Thank you, everybody, for being here. All right. Have a great day.